I went to the charity shop a few weeks ago, also known as the thrift store, and what did I find looking back out at me from one of those glass cabinets where they keep the real heat, but a vintage classic known as a Stylophone for £40, and so I left, and the local Dogs Trust missed out on my custom, but I came back a few weeks later and they'd cut the price in half, and so I went and got myself a Stylophone, and the stray dogs of the UK, £20 worse off, unfortunately. But I've always been curious about these guys because, well, fundamentally, I mean, look at it and listen to it. This is a very basic instrument. Many people will tell you it doesn't sound very good, and I might even agree with that. And yet, if I were to ask the YouTuber question, can you use this in a serious music production? Well, I mean, the answer, it's not even a question, really. The answer is just yes, obviously. Loads of people have. And at this point in everyone's Stylophone video, they bring up Space Oddity by David Bowie. And yeah, it's a bit of a tired factoid that he uses a Stylophone on this song, but it is also absolutely bananas that he uses a Stylophone on this song. Arguably the signature song of one of the most influential musicians of all time, and it's got this freaky little thing on it. That's like if To Pimp a Butterfly prominently featured the kazoo. It's just bizarre. But it's not just a case of this one song by this one guy. I mean, for a start, this one guy in question did a couple other songs with the Stylophone, but beyond David Bowie, you've got Orbital, you've got Pulp, Bell and Sebastian, Little Boots, Kraftwerk. The Stylophone, this dumbass thing, is a genuine fixture in the history of recorded music. But can it do serious music production? This is a Stylophone. To be specific, it is the 2007 model of Stylophone, which means a couple things, but we'll get to that in a bit. I might have already had a couple comments asking why the bottom of my Stylophone looks a little naked. It turns out there's meant to be a label here, but there isn't anymore. So I suppose that the Dogs Trust got their revenge on me after all. But essentially, here's how it works. Each key on this keyboard is an electrical contact, as is the end of this stylus, both made out of metal, which means when we put them together, we're completing an electrical circuit, the oscillator is going to oscillate, and we're going to get a tone. Just like that. You'll notice that there's no envelope on this thing, which means that at least on this one that sits in front of me, I am getting the occasional pretty gnarly click on the start and end of a note. But, you know, that's fine. It's whatever. It's all part of the charm. The same does apply, though, when you do a kind of glissando up the keyboard. It's less of a monotone style smooth glide and more like you're kind of falling down the stairs and hitting each individual one as you tumble down. You've got your volume slider on the side here, and you've got a little vibrato switch there, which I think is actually genuinely pretty musical, like quite a good way of getting some expression out of this thing. And something which I'm surprised that more people don't mention, you got this tuning knob on the back. And people like to whinge with the Stylophone about the fact that you don't get too much range on this keyboard. But actually, once you factor in this tuning knob on the back, the range becomes substantial. There is actually far more than an octave's variance on how low at the lowest setting and how high at the highest setting you can get this thing to go. And if you also are a masochist, then this is a surprisingly viable alternative way of playing the Stylophone. It lets you achieve some kind of real nice pitch slides. I know that this sounds really silly at the moment, but we're going to come back and do this later and it's going to be way cooler, I promise. But something even cooler about specifically this digital 2007 one that I have seen nobody else be excited about ever is the fact that you have actually got an audio input on this one. It's even labelled MP3. Look at that in just such a delightfully charming mid-2000s way. Neither the newer or older models have this, and if you've watched my video on the Monotrons before, you will know that an audio input, that is your gateway to the outside world. And so I'm really excited to mess about with this, and hopefully, once we start doing some sound design later down the line, maybe this will open up a couple of possibilities. Who knows? Finally, specifically on these 2007 ones, you get 3 different sounds. So I've been playing you the nice one. But also, if it strikes your fancy, there's a worse one. And an even worse one. The old original analog stylophones didn't have a switch here, and so it was just one sound throughout. And then the newer reissues, which are once again analog, do have the little switch here, but it's an octave control and just the one sound throughout. So I do like that this 2007 stylophone does have a bit of unique versatility to it, even if a third of that versatility does sound like this. So that is the Stylophone, and besides a couple little idiosyncrasies that we'll get to in a bit, that is pretty much everything there is to say about it. It is a basic instrument, and so, well, that begs the question, how come this dinky little thing has such an impressive list of notable users? Well, as someone who absolutely was not there at the time and should not be qualified to comment, it must have been pretty groundbreaking, right? Like, this is the Mini Moog. It wasn't the first synth, but it was among the first to be mass-produced and kind of one of your first to be available to the everyman. It is your archetypical early analog synth, right? Costs thousands, weighs a ton, proper, serious instrument. Compare that to the original Stylophone, also an analog synth, far more basic, but also this big and dirt cheap. Guess, actually guess, how long it took to get from Mini Moog technology to distill that down to Stylophone in toy form. I'll put a little timer up. The Stylophone came out before the Mini Moog. 2 years before, 1968. 10 years before 1968, synthesizers looked like this and filled entire rooms. And now, it's the late 60s and any dumbass kid could get this for Christmas. And so, of course, every single dumbass kid wants this for Christmas. This video is a holiday special, by the way. Ho ho, hope I can finish it on time. The Stylophone was an immediate success, and in retrospect, how could it not have been, when it is affordable and technically impressive and comes with glowing celebrity endorsements from the most beloved figures of the day, like David Bowie, and another one that I just cannot put my finger on right now. But my point is, given the time that this came out, it must have been genuinely impressive on some level, and with at least one famous early adopter who we can all look back on without wincing, it shouldn't really be any wonder that for a brief period, and despite how simple it looks in hindsight, the Stylophone kinda conquered the world. But now what I'm wondering is if it's possible to just make it do a whole load of weird shit. Extended Stylophone techniques. What are we saying? Well, first, let me just point out a couple eccentricities of this thing. Some of those might be dead ends, and some might just get a couple of cogs twisting. And finding out which of those is which is just all the joy of discovery. First of all, you'll have noticed in the last little section that I kind of went back and forth between playing this out of the audio output and playing it through the speaker into my microphone. And the reason for that is not solely because my cables are really short and I kept on pulling everything off my desk. There is actually a substantial difference in the sound character you get from this thing, depending on whether or not you take advantage of this kind of ropey little speaker that's on here. Even the vibrato, at least on this model for some reason, is way more pronounced through the speaker versus through the output. And either approach here is perfectly viable. Different artists prefer different ones. So here's Kraftwerk, for instance. They're playing through the wire, and that gives a kind of direct, blocky, synthy old sound. Whereas here is Big Dave, and he's playing it into his vocal mic. And because he's doing it this way, it means he can do these huge gestures in front of the microphone, which A, look really cool, showbiz, but B, let him get dynamic variation by varying the distance between it and his mic. He can do these big swells which suit the more lyrical style of music that he's playing here. And so I guess that is our first technique, of playing this into a microphone and varying the distance so that you get dynamics. You are no longer limited to just one volume, and in fact you kind of get a very crude sort of envelope because you don't have to have these super blocky attacks and releases anymore. Nice. But what if I told you there is a wired equivalent to this? Ever heard of a volume slider? Bear with me, there is a reason that I'm bringing this up, and that's because on this particular model, I can't speak to any other, but on this fella specifically, the volume knob does not only change the volume, there is a noticeable variation in tone between the loudest and quietest settings. That is kind of significant, right? It's like a secret tone control. And it means that if you're recording with this, you might want to choose your volume carefully depending on the type of tone you're going for. Or even better, consciously use this as you're playing as a little expressive measure. The audio input here is kind of a weird one, actually, because whatever you put in here completely ignores the internals of this. You know, the volume doesn't matter. It just passes straight through. Kind of like what dairy does to me. So your volume in is your volume out. And I guess the question becomes, along the way, does this lad impart any kind of specific character? Maybe. I don't know. Let's find out. The answer is a bit, for sure, especially if you're going loud through these speakers, which, by the way, do get quite loud. You can definitely get them to break up a little bit, just as long as you don't mind upsetting everyone else in your building. But hey, speaking of ruptured eardrums, wherever you have got an output and an input next to each other, you are only ever one cable away from unleashing a vicious feedback loop upon the world. Incidentally, I've got this audio splitter here. It's mostly broken, I think. One of these halves doesn't really work properly. But if I connect it in this very specific way and kind of just finagle this connection a little, I can get some quite interesting sounds, I think, just made out of noise feeding back on itself. Now, before I show you probably the most practical way of getting a bit more mileage out of your stylophone, let's do a quick fire slop segment called Is This Anything? All you have to do to get a note to play is close this circuit, but you can close it with anything metal. That means if I lay down my arm candy on the keyboard here, I can play stylophone through it. Is this anything? Technically, you could use this principle to hit two keys at once, but nothing much seems to happen. Is this anything? There's some exposed wire here, so that works too. Is this anything? What would happen if you put a battery in the middle of this? Modding? Possibly? Thanks for watching Is This Anything? And now, welcome to the sister show. This is something, because, surprise, turns out effects do some real heavy lifting with the stylophone. See, we've not got very many controls here, and so anything we can possibly do to add just a little bit more expressivity to this thing, especially if we can do it live, is going to be a huge bonus. Lucky for us, that's actually really easy. I've set up an effects rack here, and this will work for any synth or any sound, but I have tuned everything with the stylophone in mind. And there are 8 macros which I can control with these 8 sliders here on my MIDI keyboard. And it is bonkers how much this does for the expressivity of this thing, especially having a filter. Like, that is easy to implement and makes a substantial difference. However, a problem does arise. See, really, this is a two-handed instrument, isn't it? You hold it and you play it with the stylus, two hands. I guess if you wanted a spare hand to mess about with effects, you can put it on a surface like that and play it with one hand and have one hand for finagling. But the issue with that is, what if you then wanted to change the volume or the pitch on the back? Whoops, you couldn't. That's a disaster. But I could think of exactly one solution. I guess you could also use a foot controller or pedals. By the way, if you want this effect track, it's free. It's in the description. Have at it. I only use the most basic Ableton stock plugins on purpose. So if you have any version of Ableton, this will work for you and you can give it a go. It's very simple, but I don't know. It's there if you want it. Enjoy. I think there's a bit of an identity crisis going on with the Stylophone. I mean, the original model came out coming on 60 years ago at this point, and at the time they were this huge craze, the Labubu of the late 60s, and yet within 10 years of then, they were off the market, and the company that made them, Debrec, no longer existed. And that kind of flash in the pan ubiquity, followed by a 30-year disappearance, that dates a product. I think that in lots of people's minds, the Stylophone is trapped at exactly this one moment as the kind of goofy, kind of annoying toy that soundtracked a whole load of baby boomers' childhoods. And so when Debrec came back in the 2000s, headed up by the son of the original inventor, it very much would have been a nostalgia operation, right? Like, more or less as simple as, remember this thing? It's back. The target would have been normies in their 40s, and that's all well and good, but at some point since the Stylophone's invention, us freaky little synth nerds just had to get our grubby little paws on this thing. Because there is a genuine kind of crusty charm to using the Stylophone as a serious instrument, and there is plenty of precedent from popular and respected artists doing just that. And so I think that the modern day Debrec have found themselves kind of slightly split in half by two very different audiences. On the one hand, they're this legacy toy company with a nostalgic product that evokes a very specific time for lots of people. But on the other hand, well, the times have changed and the industry's changed, and now there is a whole new huge demographic that they can cater to of just freaks and nerds who like synths. And you can feel this tension when you go on their website. The first thing you see is CPM, DFA, compact, portable, modular, analog, dynamic, multi-filter. That is what it's actually called. And a theremin and analog drone synthesizer. It is all just so intense. And then you look up Stylophone on Google Images. There it is. That's a Stylophone. That's what I was expecting to see. I feel bad because a lot of these products look pretty good. They seem reasonably priced and interesting. I'm sure they're fine, but it kind of feels like no matter how much Debrec are going to innovate and make new things, their iconic, well-known product is always going to be this archaic little thing that dates back to a time when the synth had barely even been invented. But also, I kind of feel like the jank and simplicity of something like this is kind of the whole appeal. I've spent a lot of this video kind of clowning on the Stylophone sound, and I don't feel that bad about that because it is pretty ugly. But it's ugly in the most endearing and charming way. I like those giant rubber Casio watches. And it kind of feels like the more serious you try and make something that was born to be this goofy, the more you stray away from that fun essence that made it so beloved in the first place. There's inherent value in being unique, and when you take pains to sand down all of those rough edges and to conform to some imagined higher standard, hey, maybe you'll reach it, but you will also not be so unique anymore, and that is a big loss. Specifically, I'm talking about stylophones right now, not people. There is no allegory or moral to this video. Never will be. That is most of what I've got to say about the Stylophone, I think. Thank you very much for watching my silly video, and thank you even more if you are one of the myriad freaks and or nerds that have given this channel so much support in the year of our Lord 2025. It has been a frankly nutty year, and to be honest, I still don't really feel like I know what I'm doing with these videos, but everyone is always very nice, and that makes me feel happy. And so I can't wait to do more dumbass stuff like this in the big beautiful 2026 that lies ahead. But all of that previous stuff that I've just said to you, you're only allowed to accept that sincere expression if you are subscribed to the channel. If not, sorry, you're going to have to wipe that all clean. I've got some affiliate links if you're that way inclined, and I've also got a whole other video about the Korg Monotrons, which are slightly similar to the Stylophone, so you can watch that if you want. Do either or both of those, or none of those. Either way, thank you for watching. See you next year. Lots of love. Bye!